Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Product Compliance in Fashion and Textiles, Navigating New Rules on Labelling, Ecodesign and Environmental Claims. So as always, I'll just do a little bit of orientation about the webinar platform before I introduce our speakers for today. The webinar slides are available to the left side of your screen, along with a few more helpful links if you'd like to explore and learn more about compliance and risks, what we do and how we can help simplify and accelerate your compliance processes. And we want this webinar to be as engaging as possible, so please do send us any questions you may have and we'll aim to address them during the Q&A session at the end. And if you would like to submit a question for this session, use the Ask a Question button on the left side of your screen. We'll also follow up with you directly for any questions that we don't have time to get to during today's session. And at any time, if you're also interested in reaching out to a member of our team to follow up with you directly about a topic outside of asking a question here, you can also use the Start a Conversation button at the bottom of your screen. And last but not least, the webinar recording will be sent to you within 24 hours. My name is Orla Morris, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Compliance and Risks, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Emilia Essenza and Joyce Costello. So Emilia is a Senior Regulatory Compliance Specialist with over 7 years of experience in the legal compliance sector. She joined Compliance and Risks in 2017 and is now a Senior Team Leader. As a Senior Regulatory Compliance Specialist, she is keen to keep clients up to date on global regulatory developments, with a particular focus on her areas of expertise, which include consumer protection, textiles, data protection, and industrial machinery. Emilia graduated cum laude with a master's degree in law at the University of Catania, Italy, and holds a postgraduate diploma in legal professions. She's worked for several legal offices in Italy, where she has gained extensive experience in private practice. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emilia.
Thank you, Orla, for the introduction. And hello, everyone.
We're also joined by Joyce Costello, who is a regulatory professional with extensive experience in researching and assessing global environmental product safety regulations, particularly in the electronic sector. Joyce is currently a Senior Regulatory and Compliance Specialist in the Global Regulatory Compliance team here at Compliance and Risks, joining us in 2013. With over 10 years' expertise in global RoHS legislation and product safety conformity assessment requirements, Joyce works closely with customers to assist them in understanding the implications of evolving regulations on their products. Joyce also has a BCL and LLM from University College Cork and also holds a higher diploma in French. Thanks for joining us today, Joyce.
Thank you, Orla, and hello to everyone joining us.
And very quickly, just before we kick off the webinar, I'd like to provide a background about compliance and risks for those who are joining us for the first time. Here at Compliance and Risks, our mission is to help ensure global companies have the tools and information to build safe, sustainable products in a world full of change. We are the trusted product compliance technology provider for the world's leading brands and have spent 2 decades honing the digital tools, expertise, and content you need to stay ahead of the dynamic regulatory landscape and prove your product's compliance, protecting your brands, and also critically helping to drive your growth. At Compliance and Risks, we have the world's most comprehensive regulatory database with over 100,000 regulations historically available in C2P, and I think we hit 110 regulations this week as well, which is fantastic. And with a global regulatory coverage and expertise across over 10 industries, we understand that regulatory compliance definitely doesn't sleep. And our regulatory expert team is truly global, with 28 languages collectively spoken across the team, all fortified by our 30 global knowledge partners. C2P is our enterprise SME-led software, the key to unlocking market access as new products can be designed and built with full confidence you've met all compliance obligations. And this includes staying on top of regulatory changes and their impact worldwide with early warning alerts, impact probability, productivity workflow tools, and so much more. And with that, I'm delighted to finally hand it over to you, Amelia.
Thank you, Orla, for the introduction, and welcome again to all our attendees today on our webinar, specifically dedicated to product compliance for the fashion industry. So what's on the agenda for today? We are aware that the regulatory landscape in this sector is evolving very rapidly. And we know, even from our clients' feedback and comments, that companies in the fashion space are finding it increasingly challenging to stay on top of the regulatory changes and to know what's coming down the line. So this is why we have structured this webinar to cover the key regulatory developments of the last few months. And we decided to focus on product-related regulations. So the most recent changes that have already happened or are about to happen in the coming months. In the first part, I'll be covering the recent changes regarding labeling of textile products. Then I'll move on environmental claims, because as you're probably aware, greenwashing is a very high trending topic at the moment. And then I'll continue with eco-design, as there have been quite some recent and important updates under the EU ESPR. The second part, which will be presented by my colleague Joyce, will instead focus on horizontal rules applicable to textile products, meaning all those products which apply to a wider range of products, possibly all products, but that have an impact on textile products as well, such as the GPSR. Before we start, I wanted to show you this chart, which is automatically generated by our platform within our platform C2P, and gives an idea of what's happening at the moment in the textile world. So since 2018, we are witnessing a 92% increase in textile regulation around the globe. And just in the last 6 months, there are already 137 new regulations. But it's not only the volume of the regulation, but it's also the nature of this regulation that has changed. They're more complex. They are coming from different jurisdictions, and it's always difficult to keep track of them. And they're driven by greater demands in terms of sustainability, circular economy, and greater transparency by companies. Also, another trend is that we're seeing is the imposition of stricter penalties in case of non-compliance, increased enforcement actions and litigations, and green claims is a good example of this trend at the moment. So moving now to the first item on our agenda, let's begin with the recent updates regarding textile labeling. And let's start with the EU. As you're probably aware, there is a revision process still ongoing regarding the textile labeling regulation. The process has started back in 2023, but unfortunately is not concluded yet. So a call for evidence was held in September until September 2023. But the most important step in this process was the validation workshop held in October 2024, where stakeholders were involved to discuss and detect the current problem of the existing regulation and the possible solution, and gather also their reactions. The publication of the proposed revision was originally planned for Q2, but again, as I said, it's been delayed and it's probably now going to be published in Q4. The main points under discussion, and this is probably why a consensus hasn't been reached on the text until now, are the revision of the fiber names in Annex 1. So as you know, the classification in Annex 1 is partially outdated because novel fibers do not fit in the classification, and also the procedure to add new fibers is quite burdensome. Plus, recycled fibers are not regulated. Another point of revision is the extension of the contents of the label, because as you know, currently the regulation only covers information on fiber composition. So it is very, very likely that new items will need to be included in the labels, for example, regarding the country of origin information, or substances of presence of allergenic substances, EU-wide uniform size formats, and other information on the circularity of the product. Of course, the consequence is that all this information cannot be included in a physical label only, so it is likely that part of this information will be provided in the digital label. However, it is not decided yet which information should remain in the physical label and which information should go in the digital one. And there is still uncertainty on this point. We have strong requests from companies to allow for the digital labeling, whereas consumer protection agencies are more reluctant because they are trying to protect, for example, elderly people who have no internet access and would like to have the information on the product. Another element in favor of the digital labeling is, of course, the multiple translations needed in the different member states' language. So a digital label will, of course, avoid a very lengthy and confusing labels attached to the garment. So we will need to wait here and see what the outcome will be when the proposal is published. It will be also interesting to see how this regulation will interact with the information requirements of the ESPR and the digital product passport. And I'll talk about this in a while when we will cover the eco-design updates. The same discussion, so physical label versus digital label, is happening in the US at the moment. So the American Apparel and Footwear Association filed a petition for digital labeling in February 2025. There was a period for comments, and there is no review still from the Federal Trade Commission of this petition. The petition is not requesting a change in the contents of the label, but only to allow for the information to be provided by digital means. So at the moment, the petition is still under the review of the Federal Trade Commission. There are delays due to the fact that the change in administration, some of the commissioners were fired. So we don't know when the review is going to happen. But we know that in order to speed up the process, AAFA is scheduling a meeting with the Enforcement Division of the Bureau of the Consumer Protection. They also published a survey to be completed by interested parties by the 8th of August. To cover the cost benefits of digital labels and share the information with the authorities. So when the Federal Trade Commission will review the petition, then they will issue a decision and will know more. And probably if they issue a formal rulemaking, there will be another comment period. Moving back to the EU, especially in France, for another important update on textile, as it has already happened in the past, France is leading the way with the establishment of an eco-score for textile products as part of the implementation of the climate and resilience law. After a period of consultation, France issued two pieces of legislation, a draft order and a draft decree, which outlined the details for calculating this score. Originally, this score was called Eco-Score, but please note that now it has been changed to environmental cost. all producers, importers, and distributors placing products, textiles products and clothing on the French market, including foreign brands, have to comply. This scheme is going to be voluntary, but it is likely that it will become mandatory in 2026. So the environmental cost must provide information on the environmental impact of the textile product, and it's based on 16 environmental indicators taken from the EU PF method, plus 2 additional environmental indicators which have been introduced by France, which are export outside the EU in order to penalize products exported as waste, and also microfiber emissions in order to capture pollution from synthetic fibers. As you can see from the standardized label, which is has to be used, this cost is expressed in impact points. And the government has also launched a platform to help calculate the environmental cost. So this is definitely something to monitor in the coming months for the finalized text. Let's move now to Turkey, because there has been quite a big update in June when an amendment to the communiqué on conformity assessment of certain products with relevant standards has been issued. There is a new disclosure obligation to disclose information on parts of animal origin contained in the product. So this means that companies have to identify the animal from which the parts derive. They have to include the information on the label, packaging, or accompanying document. And also this disclosure information apply for products sold online. And the information must be presented in the page where the main product features are specified, and the information must be in Turkish. This amendment is probably related to what happened in Turkey at the beginning of the year, especially in February, when several fines were imposed on fashion brands for not disclosing the presence of pig skin in their footwear. So now the Ministry of Trade has issued also an announcement along with this amendment, saying that there is a focus also on textiles and footwear regarding this information obligation. Now, across the ocean in Quebec, we have another important update, which came into effect on the 1st of June. As you're probably aware, under the charter of the French language in Quebec, every inscription on the product or the packaging or accompanying document must be in French. There is an exception for trademarks, but under this new amendment, from the 1st of June 2025, generic terms or descriptive elements of the product which are included in the trademark must appear in French. So only the product name and the company name can remain in the original language. There is a transition period, so a non-compliant product manufactured before the 1st of June 2025 can still be sold until the 1st of June 2027. I would like to close this part on labeling by mentioning some news that they're circulating in China, and also the publication of an implementation plan affecting the textile industry. Just to give you an idea of the goals that the Chinese government is setting for the fashion sector in the next year. So by 2030, according to this plan, new digital technology will be enhanced on a wide range of aspects for textile products, such as smart fibers, product design technologies, and also to ensure full traceability of the products, also by digital means such as RFID tags, which are mentioned in the plan as well. A white paper also was published during by researchers and the industry association during the fashion conference held in Beijing on the 25th of June. And they are suggesting the potential feature for a digital product passport in China for textile product. So there will be developments in China in this sector in the coming years. Let's now move to the second item on our agenda, which are environmental claims. As I mentioned at the start, greenwashing and the regulation of environmental claims has massively increased in the last year, as well as enforcement actions and penalties imposed by national authorities. In the EU, we have, at least for now, two sister directives. The first one is the greenwashing directives, which is already finalized, and member states have to transpose it by the 27th of March 2026. And it amends the unfair commercial practices to expand the list of misleading commercial practices. It contains broad definitions of environmental claims and sustainability labels to basically include any type of information in any form regarding the environmental or social characteristic of a product. The directive prohibits generic environmental claims without demonstrating excellent environmental performance. For example, compliance with recognized eco-labeling schemes such as the EU eco-label. It also prohibits the use of a sustainability label without a certification scheme, and also expand the list of unfair practices included in Annex 1. For example, it prohibits environmental claims about the entire product when the claim is only about a certain aspect of the product, and also claims which are only based on the offsetting of greenhouse gas emissions. The second sister directive is, at least for now, the Green Claims Directive. This directive is still in a draft form, and its finalization is not certain anymore, as you may know. As you can see from this timeline, the initial draft is from March 2023. At the moment, we have three different drafts from each EU institution, and the finalization process is not concluded given to the lack of agreement on a number of points. In June, just before the expected final trilogue negotiations, the EU Commission announced its intention to withdraw the Green Claims proposal, which was quite surprising because a complete withdrawal of an entire piece of legislation after 2 years of discussion is quite unusual. But that announcement then was criticized by many stakeholders because it will leave basically greenwashing unregulated. Another announcement was issued by the EU Commission at the end of June, saying that the directive is still on the table if an agreement on the exemptions for micro enterprises is reached. So we will have to see and watch what will happen in the coming months for sure regarding this proposal. But for now, what are the main requirements of this directive? It requires that green claims must be substantiated with scientific evidence that is widely recognized. They have to be appropriately communicated, and also the most important part is that they have to be verified ex ante by third-party conformity assessment bodies. The main points under discussion, as I said, are for sure the exemption for micro enterprises, and also the possibility to introduce a simplified verification procedure for simple claims, to try to make the procedure less complex for companies, even though a clear definition of a simple claim is difficult to be provided in the text. Other points of discussion are a maximum verification time, because we know that companies would like to have their claims out as soon as possible. So the draft text set a 30 days time limit to have the verification procedure completed. And then regarding the penalties, the draft by the EU Council deleted the article on the penalties, leaving space to member states to decide, whereas the other two drafts by the other two institutions contains high penalties, which are 4% of a company annual turnover, plus additional penalties such as the confiscation of revenues from products sold with non-compliant green claims. Also, the transition period of the Green Claims Directive is not clear yet, because it ranges from 2 years to 3 years. So that's another unclear point at the moment. Now, apart from the EU, I compiled here a list of recent updates concerning green claims around the globe. For example, in Canada, Canada issued an amendment to the Competition Act to specifically regulate environmental claims by requiring claims to be based on adequate and proper testing. And Canada has also published the finalized guidelines to clarify this amendment in June. In the US, there is nothing specific happening at the moment. The green guides have been revised last time in 2012, and there was a public consultation in April 2023. But this is something that I will keep an eye on in the next year, because it is likely that it will be revised soon, although delay may happen to the change in administration. In the UK, we have a new consumer protection regime in force from the 6th of April, which strengthened the enforcement power of the UK Competition and Markets Authority. Even if the new regime is not about green claims, greenwashing is likely to be the focus of the new enforcement powers of the authorities, meaning that fashion companies will be under scrutiny of the authority, and there are high fines up to 10% of annual group turnover without court involvement here. In Australia, greenwashing has been included in the 2025-2026 compliance and enforcement policy and priorities, so probably new legislation will be proposed soon. Mexico has issued in February 2025 a proposed amendment to the consumer protection law to require the substantiation of environmental claims. And also worldwide, 20 members of the ICPN have written an open letter to the fashion and textile sector to highlight the importance of complying with consumer protection law when making environmental claims. So the letter encourages businesses to raise standards of compliance by providing common principles that apply to everyone when making environmental claims. Regardless of the finalization of the EU Green Claims Directive, it is important to bear in mind that we currently have consumer protection laws that can be used by enforcement authorities, even regarding the environmental claims and misleading information provided by them to consumers. To conclude this part on greenwashing, what we're seeing is that also as a consequence of the regulatory changes mentioned earlier, is that there is a rise in greenwashing disputes. The most common cases concern misleading carbon neutrality claims, misleading claims about the percentage of green fibers or more generally materials contained in the product, and claims about product recyclability. Another trend is the rise in greenwashing, which is a term used to describe the opposite practice of not disclosing environmental achievement as a result of the intense scrutiny by enforcement authorities. A practice that could lead to different issues, such as decreasing consumer trust in the company's product, and also missing information and lack of transparency. So it's something that it's not advisable in the long term. And the final part of this overview of product-focused regulation is on eco-design, because there have been recent updates under the ESPR. As you can see from this chart generated by C2P, circular economy and eco-design regulations, which are basically two topics intertwined, we see that the number of regulation has basically tripled at a global level in these two topics. This is probably caused by a higher awareness of the concept of eco-design and the objective to make products that stay in the life cycle as long as possible, minimizing the environmental impact. In the EU, as I said, we have now the ESPR, which repeals the Ecodesign directive, and it is very broad. It applies to basically all products with very limited exceptions, and allows for the introduction through delegated acts of performance and eco-design requirements for products. The most important update for fashion companies has been the publication of the first working plan in April 2025, which has identified 7 priority products for which eco-design requirements will be established in the next 5 years. And textiles is one of these 7 priority products to be regulated. Of course, this is all part of the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles, which started back in March 2022. For textiles, the delegated act is expected in 2027. And as I said, it will likely introduce requirements stemming from the overarching performance and information requirements set in the SPR. In fact, there are 3 main types of requirements under the SPR, which are performance, information, and transparency requirement. And today I'll be focusing on the first 2. So let's start with the performance requirement. According to the working plan, textiles have been included as a priority product because there is a high potential to improve lifetime extension, material efficiency, and reduce the impacts on natural resources. So it is likely that eco-design requirements will be established in terms of durability, recyclability, recycled content, and also other potential textile-specific requirements could be limits to, as I said, to water, energy use, resistance to microplastic shedding, modular design, and other quality requirements. The second core element of the ESPR is the improved access to the information about the products. So the good news about this disclosure obligations is that the working plan states that the information requirements under the ESPR will work in synergy with the textile labeling regulation currently under review. So it seems that the intention of the institution is to coordinate and align the labeling information across the 2 pieces of legislation in order to simplify the compliance for businesses. So producers must provide information through a digital product passport, which is, as I said, expected in 2027. We don't know the exact details yet because we have to see the text of the draft delegated acts. But we're already talking about the 15 elements of the digital product passport. And I listed here some of these elements. For sure, the information about the identification of the product will be included, such as a unique product identifier, a global trade number, tariff code, and also other information that is going to be included will be for sure compliance documents such as a self-declaration, substances of concern under REACH, for example, PFAS restrictions, user manuals, and also information about the identification of economic operators. What is sure for now is that company will need to gather a lot of information to comply with this directive, with this delegated act once published, and a lot of information needs to be gathered along the supply chain. So it's crucial to start to implement tools and processes to comply now before it is too late. This concludes my part. Thanks, everyone. I'll now pass it over to you, Joyce.
Thanks very much, Emilia. Quite a regulatory mountain, I think, to climb, but that information was very, very clear. To continue, I'd like to turn our attention just briefly to some major developments in the area of safety regulation that will impact many fashion companies placing their products on the EU, the UK and US markets, both now and in the near future. As most of you will already be aware, the EU has a new baseline safety standard, the GPSR, that's in place since the 13th of December 2024. This is a big development for companies producing all types of products for the EU market. It has a remarkably extensive scope. If you manufacture or import textiles for the EU, including clothing, fashion accessories, footwear, home furnishings, or even innovative fashion items, then you likely have obligations under the regulation. The ever-expanding second-hand and used item market is also subject to the regulation. So even if the item you're importing and marketing is used, it will still be caught by the rules. As I'm limited on time, I'll outline what we consider at C&R to be the three most pressing obligations under the GPSR. Number one, the basic safety requirement. Secondly, the expectation that safety issues and accidents are reported. And thirdly, the strict traceability obligations. So in terms of safety, the GPSR mandates that products are safe by design. The regulation requires manufacturers to perform an internal risk analysis by completing a risk assessment for each product with regard to the suggested list of safety aspects which are indicated in the regulation. Things like the product characteristics, its presentation, its appearance. For example, is it a child-appealing product? Categories of consumers using the product, in particular by assessing risk for vulnerable consumers, such as children, older people, and persons with disabilities, and as well as impact of gender differences on health and safety, any cybersecurity features, or evolving functionalities embedded in the product. The assessment process and result do need to be documented and should ultimately feed the technical documentation. That documentation will then be the proof that you indeed have completed the required assessment. So we can see that the EU Commission now wants to see proof that all products, including clothing and other fashion accessories, are assessed both broadly for safety concerns and more specifically with regard to other hazards like chemical dangers, as are specified under the REACH regulation, just as one example. Moving on to reporting, under GPSR, it is necessary to take immediate action when any safety issues arise. So if you become aware of a serious safety concern related to your product, you have clear responsibilities to act without delay by informing your customers. You need to quickly contact all your customers who bought the product, and do this directly if it's possible with the data that you've collected at the time of sale. It would also mean sending out email alerts, for example, or notices essentially saying, this product may be unsafe, stop using it, along with guidance on next steps. You should also inform the authorities, specifically the EU authorities through the Safety Gate or RAPEX system, as soon as you know that a product you sold poses a serious risk, so that the regulators are also on alert that there's a dangerous item on the market. The regulation allows for different remedies to be offered to consumers who are affected by unsafe products. These include recall, repair, replacement, or an adequate refund. Even if you don't choose to recall the product, though, be alert to the fact that the authorities do have powers to order recalls, or indeed any other corrective measures, and companies will be expected to respond swiftly to any orders that are made. The GPSR also establishes new requirements for product labelling. These measures are intended to strengthen traceability of the product, primarily enabling authorities to identify both the manufacturer and the specific product in the event of a safety incident. Manufacturers must ensure that the products bear a type, batch, or serial number, or other element that allows the identification of the product. Both manufacturers and importers also have to provide their contact information, and that must include a postal and electronic address. In addition, they must ensure that the product they manufacture or import, as the case may be, is accompanied by clear instructions and safety information in a language which can be easily understood by consumers. That language will generally be determined by the member state concerned. These traceability obligations do apply equally to products that are sold online, so it is essential that online product listings indicate the same traceability information that you would normally make available with the product in the case of an offline sale. Together, the enhanced reporting and traceability features of the GPSR should mean that more data is available to regulators. And ultimately, we expect a greater risk of non-compliances being exposed. Please do be aware too that for the purposes of complying with the GPSR, supplying information exclusively through electronic means, such as a QR code or website link, won't suffice. You can use a digital label in addition to a physically supplied information, but they cannot substitute the mandatory printed information on the product itself. The intent is to ensure really that customers and inspectors can access the essential identification and safety details directly without relying on scanning or internet access. Finally, I'd like to mention on the GPSR that it does require a responsible economic operator to be established in the EU for all products sold on the EU market, including those that are not covered by specific EU harmonisation rules. The responsible person plays a critical role in product safety, and they have various obligations like, for example, regularly checking that the product complies with the technical documentation, and also regularly verifying that the product complies with requirements on labelling and information provision. Companies who are found to be in breach of the GPSR could face substantial fines, depending on the member state's local legislation. For instance, in France, a fine can reach as high as €600,000, or else 10% of the annual worldwide turnover of the economic operator, or the online marketplace involved. Beyond the EU, there have also been some recent ramping up of product safety obligations in both the UK and in the US, which will affect most companies producing consumer products for those markets. The UK has finally enacted its new product safety framework law, the Product Regulation and Metrology Act, which it's already been referred to by its acronym PRAM. This act became law on the 21st of July, and it is now in force. The law addresses modern safety issues, technological developments, and it ensures a level playing field between the high street and online marketplaces. So we can see a similar regulatory focus as in the GPSR. It is a framework law in every sense of that word, and so further regulation will be needed in order to lay down the essential details and obligations that will eventually apply. There are a number of knowns. Firstly, the Act has a very broad scope, again, similar to GPSR, with a very limited number of products excluded. So clothing and all other related fashion items are certainly covered. Regulations that are made under the law might include product requirements in relation to product components, both tangible and intangible. So again, as in the EU, some controls will possibly be placed on the safety of smart clothing, wearables, and similar items. As I already mentioned, online marketplaces selling to customers in the UK will now bear a greater responsibility for the safety and authenticity of products sold on their platforms. Just to note that safeguards against excessive ministerial discretion do mean that any proposed regulations that are drafted will require explicit parliamentary approval. Finally, and this is important to note, the PRAM Act builds on the existing product safety landscape, which is contained in the 2005 General Product Safety Regulations. So the 2005 regulations remain the basis for general consumer product safety in the UK and continue to be legally binding. And finally, from me, starting next year on the 8th of July, certificate data for all imports of consumer products that are regulated by the US Consumer Product Safety Commission must be electronically filed. Products that are entering from foreign trade zones have a few more months to prepare, with e-filing required from the 8th of January 2027. The process will apply to all shipments, and that includes de minimis shipments, so it will affect direct-to-consumer e-commerce shipments. Certificates covered include both the General Conformity Certificate for general consumer products and the Children's Product Conformity Certificate for products intended for children 12 years or younger. So if you are importing a product subject to a mandatory safety standard, then you must file the GCC or the CPC electronically at the time of entry into the US, specifically when you're filing your entry documentation with US Customs and Border Protection through the Automated Commercial Environment System. The CPSC is enabling itself, really, through this rule, to be more efficient in product inspections and to more effectively target high-risk products being imported into the US. Given the goal with the e-filing requirement is to improve enforcement efficiency and risk targeting, importers of non-compliant shipments will face more scrutiny and will be at a greater risk of having their products flagged for inspection. You can access the CPSC product registry now to set up a business account and to participate in the e-filing voluntary stage. and early registration is being encouraged by the CPSC to ensure that you're fully ready for implementation next year. That's all from me, and thank you all for listening. Back to you, Orla.
Brilliant. Thank you both for that amazing breakdown of the recent regulatory activity. Definitely a regulatory avalanche. And thank you all for your attention so far. And as mentioned at the beginning, we now have the floor open for the Q&A session. So as mentioned, if any of you have any questions that you would like us to answer, and by us, I mean Joyce and Amelia, please do let us know by using the Ask a Question widget to the left side of your screen. We do have a few incoming questions already, so we'll answer them now. Is there a timeline for the implementation of the digital product passport for textile products? And what are the first elements that are going to be included?
I can take it. As I said, regarding textile digital product passport, we now only have the working plan published in April. So the plan is to introduce the digital product passport gradually in phases. We don't know the details because we have to wait to the publication of the draft delegated act. But a study was conducted in June 2024 by the European Parliamentary Research Service, and they outlined 3 possible phases for the implementation of the DPP for textiles. The first phase to be for 2027 would be the implementation of a minimal or simplified digital product passport. Then the second phase will provide for more information to be included in the digital product passport until 2030. It's called something like advanced digital product passport. And then the final and the third and final stage until 2033 is for a full circular digital product passport. So it's something that it's starting now, but it's going to be, maybe the information obligations will be more stringent as the time goes.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amelia. Second question, regarding labeling requirements, you mentioned under the GPSR, in what situations can product information be placed separately from the product itself?
That's for me, I think, Orla. There's really only one situation that allows you to depart from the physical labeling requirement, and that is if the size of the product just does not allow you to provide the information there. So size is the only criterion that would allow you to migrate this information maybe to the packaging or to your accompanying documentation. So that means really that you cannot use aesthetic reasons to justify moving that labeling information. And I do expect that it will be strictly enforced by the Commission.
Excellent. And yeah, I'm just conscious of the time as well. So I think this will be the final question that we'll cover today. But as mentioned, if we didn't get to your question, which there are a lot of questions that have come in, which is fantastic, we will address them after this webinar and let Amelia and Joyce do their research before getting back to you. So for the final question, which textile products will be first regulated under the ESPR?
This is for me. So again, we don't have, we only have the working plan at the moment, and the information provided in the working plan regarding the products in scope is that the priority product is textiles with a focus on apparel. Interestingly, footwear has been excluded with the explanation that there are separate, footwear is a separate product category with lower impact than the other 7 priority products identified. But according to the plan, even footwear, even for footwear, a study will be conducted and will be completed by 2027. So for details on the types of garments in scope and I suppose possible exclusions, again, we will have to wait for the draft to be published.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amelia, and thanks, Joyce, as well. And thank you all for tuning in with us today. We hope you found today's presentation helpful, and we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming webinars. You can check out our resources section on the website to stay updated to access our latest white papers, blogs, and webinars, both upcoming and on demand. On that note, our next webinar, EU Battery Regulation, Key Compliance and Sustainability Requirements for 2025 and beyond, is taking place on September 10th. So we hope to see you there. And I'd like to say thank you again to Joyce and Amelia for that fantastic presentation today. And again, continue to send in questions if you do have them, and Joyce and Amelia will follow up with you directly and share the full Q&A list with everyone today. So thanks again.
Thank you.